being here with us. Very excited for this conversation about local campaigns and how we can activate local communities. I am privileged today to be joined by several folks doing excellent work across the world at the local level. I'm joined by Patrice O'Neill, who's the CEO and co-director of Not in Our Town, Shamsur Chauhan, creative director of Communities Incorporated, and Jordi Nijenhuis, director of Dare to Be Gray. I myself am the director of strategic partnerships at Peril at American University. I would encourage you to go see our table to learn more about all of the things that we do. If you could bring up the slides now. I'm going to take a quick moderator's privilege and talk about some of the work that we do through our community advisory resource and education centers and core. So what is CARE? It is a partnership that we have with Peril and Southern Poverty Law Center. We started it as a pilot program that was launched in 2023, and we started with two pilot locations, one in Georgia and one in Michigan. And it's based, importantly, on the mobile advisory units in Germany, for those of you that are familiar with those. We provide training and resources to local communities, and we do that through resources that are validated by our research team. So everything that we do is based on research, based in evidence, and on the feedback from the local community. So we're really tailoring resources and approaches to what that community is telling us is most resonant and what they most need. This is a list of the resources that are available, and again, I would encourage you to go over to our table. We have printed out copies of most of our resources, so you can see what we have on offer and what is available locally. And I'll just leave this up so you can learn a little bit more about CARE. We also have CARE cards at our table so you can learn more. So we are in the process, as I said, this is a pilot program, but we're in the process of moving out across the nation to try to expand the CARE approach. And once we establish a CARE core in a new location, we are going to work with partners in this room and at this conference across the prevention spectrum to build out awareness of these resources and doing the work under a banner of a new campaign, Hear Someone, Help Someone. We're launching this public awareness campaign with that slogan because it has a reference and a juxtaposition to something like see something, say something, but it highlights the human approach. We think it gets to the fundamental opportunity of prevention that when somebody is leaking their intention, when you hear someone, you can know what resources are available to help someone. So we're really excited about that. I'm happy to take more questions after the event. And I hope you'll come to our table and learn more about the work that we do. But now I'd like for us to learn from my colleagues here on the stage. So my first question, and I'll start with Patrice. Hello, good morning, thank you for joining. This is Robin Thoma, the Executive Director of Los Angeles County Human Relations Commission. So really excited that you could be here today.
Thank you.
Patrice, why don't you start by telling me a little bit about your organization and what you do?
United Against State Week. Thanks so much, Hala.
Oh,
For those of you who know, well, first of all, we're kind of the takeaway people.
Can we have the slides back up?
In this session, you will find some kind of action that you can take away, and we hope that you all participate in United Against Hate Week. For those of you who know Not in Our Town, I'm really excited to announce that I've been CEO of the organization for 3 decades, started it when I was 12, and we just announced that Justin Locke, former director of the Department of Justice Community Relations Service, will now be the new executive director for Not in Our Town. So we're super excited about that. A vital program for us is United Against Hate Week. And I just I think many of you remember those early days after Charlottesville. It was particularly tension-filled in the Bay Area because we had the Proud Boys and other white supremacist organizations marching through the streets of our town in Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco. And it was very tense. You know, on the radio you'd hear discussions about whether young people were going to go out and confront them. We had sort of anarchist movements in the streets, and there was a melee in the streets of Berkeley, and the mayor of Berkeley, Jesse Adeguin, and his chief of staff, Jacqueline McCormick, were standing on the steps of City Hall saying, what is the average person in our community going to do? They're so distraught about the hate, what could they do? And they came up with this idea to contact an artist and have a poster made. We stand united against hate. And that spread to cities across the Bay Area. And I remember walking down the street in downtown Oakland when I saw that poster. I've run an anti-hate organization for a long time, but I was so despondent. And when I saw the poster, it just released so much tension to see it in these stores and these restaurants where I'd go all the time, to know that those shopkeepers wanted to stand with our community. So a few months later, we gathered about 13 cities in our office in downtown Oakland and said, you did this poster, why did you do it? It was the first time they'd met, and what do you want to do next? And that's where the idea of United Against Hate Week was born. And we started, I think, with 25 cities in Northern California the first year. Then we got in touch with my friend and colleague, Robin Toma at the LA Human Relations Commission that had just started LA versus Hate, expanded to LA. Here we are, flash forward, I guess 7 years later, and we have over 200 cities around the country involved with United Against Hate Week. So let's go to the next slide. Thanks, Hala. So yeah, these are posters. This is sort of like a very typical thing that happens in our town. City leaders and city staff gather with the posters and they spread them around the community. Many organizations have helped spread them. U.S. attorneys' offices, attorneys general, Cook County Commission distributes their version of the poster and is engaged there. Let's go to the next one. I think this has some of our partners on the slide. So in addition to LA versus Hate, California started a program where you could call in to an anti-hate hotline, just like LA versus Hate set up. This was across the state. It was a really important expansion of this work in our state, and this connection between United Against Hate Week and sort of amplifying the hate reporting messaging. The other partners are Stop the Hate, which was a program started in California after all of the anti-Asian hate, and many community organizations experiencing hate were supported. So we have this combination of the key institutions in a community: schools, cities, city staff, civic organizations, and communities who are feeling this so intensely, coupled with faith leaders, libraries, etc. So we try to think about, like, what are the easy entry points? And the idea behind United Against Hate Week is that there are so many people who want to do something and they don't know what to do. So let's give them an easy entry point, not to just have a week of action, but to get to know their neighbors. And so this is an example of from a little booklet we put together for city leaders, 5 ways cities can participate. And it could be as simple as a proclamation, like we saw yesterday at the city of Pittsburgh. We were there when the city of Pittsburgh passed their resolution supporting Stand for All Pittsburgh, which is a group that has formed here to do ongoing anti-hate work, and United Against Hate Week. So it's an entry point and a way for people to connect. So let's go to the next one. Next slide. Yeah, so, it's like we try to find neutral places where people can go pick up their posters, can can connect. So you see them in firehouses all over too. People can go pick up their posters. And when you see the protectors with this message, I think it really sends a positive sense that we are all in this together. So the posters, if you go online and look at United Against Hate Week, you can see some of the hundreds of cities that have been involved in United Against Hate Week. Let's go to the next slide. So one of the things that we've learned over the years, and I think has been reinforced in this discussion here, is that leader messaging, not working, huh? Hala,
Can we go to the
somebody
next slide?
advance the
It won't
slide?
go.
That leader messaging is so crucial in dampening down violence. Let me just talk about this first. So, speaking of messaging, this is Valley Transit Authority in Silicon Valley, and they did a bus wrap. The workers wanted to do this, and it's particularly significant because this group of workers, a few years before, experienced the deadliest mass shooting in California in the past 50 years. And many of them are members of the Sikh community, and they wanted to do this bus, and we were so happy to see it. We're working with other transit authorities now to see if we can replicate this in other parts of the country. But speaking of messaging, let's go on to the next slide about leader messaging. Sorry, slide mess up. This is an example of some of the activities that we see on the calendar. And they're so varied. They're based on the creativity of our communities, our key institutions. So you see the one we did at the FBI last year. We did an event there with the folks that report hate crimes. There's, crafting people, artists against hate. Radio Bilingue did a session on the radio, and they went to Salinas and did posters at the farmers market. City of Pasadena is doing tremendous engagement. They're having a unity walk across their city, and they have so many elements of their city involved. So if you go and look on the site, you'll get ideas about what to do. And one of the things to do, next slide, is, again, the leader messaging. We know that when a mayor sends out a message, when a city council member, when, as you see, our senator here sends out a message, that people pay attention, that it is letting people know that these are core values that we share. And so it's also a way to spread it in a mass way with cities, police chiefs, etc. Okay, so one more slide, I think, which is showing the kinds of things that we have available. We want to make it as easy as possible. The action kits are all based on things that have been successful in the past. These are things that we know cities have done. There's the how-to of how you can do it, the Community Action Toolkit. Not in Our Town offers free film, so if you want to do a community discussion and a screening, that's available. And so the discussion guides are there. It's plug and play, easy to do. So I hope that you think about how you can participate this year, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we learn about other folks' activities. So
Thank you
thanks.
so much. Shamsur, can you share with us about your organization?
Sure, great, thank you. So Albert Einstein says, the world is a dangerous place to live, not because of the people that are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it. And that's the theme that sort of runs throughout the work of my organization. So my organization started in 2011. We started doing work around hate crime in 2013. So it was letting people know what hate crimes are, where they can report them, why it's important to report them, and where they can access support. June 2016 changed the direction of our work. That's when we had the EU referendum and we voted to leave the European Union. After that, after the result came through, reported hate crimes went up. They went up by 30% across the country. The highest increase was 100%. The second highest increase was 75% and 65%. So different parts of the country, depending on the demographics, depending on incidents that might have occurred, saw different peaks in reporting. And of course, we know that's only the tip of the iceberg because most people don't even report what they experience. That's also when we saw videos emerging on social media, people being rude, abusive, even physical attacks, criminal offences, often in the public domain, often happening on public transport. And that's when we started thinking there's a role for bystanders, a role for witnesses, people that may see these things in their environment. And that really was the beginning of Stand By Me. We thought the least that people could do is report these incidents. So they can do it anonymously, they can do it later on that day. So at least the police and agencies would know what was happening, where it was happening, and who it was happening to, so it could inform their responses. So Stand By Me was about activating bystanders, and really it was a call to action. You know, if we want to live in safe neighborhoods, if we want to work in places where we're treated with respect and dignity, there's things that we all need to do to create those environments. And we also need to stand up when those environments are threatened or challenged in any way. And really what we wanted to do was to demystify what an intervention is. We wanted to make it easy and safe for people to intervene. So it was really about addressing some of the key barriers that people might have, you know, around not knowing what to do in any particular situation, being concerned about the repercussions, about what might happen if they do intervene, and also maybe a reluctance to address that particular person. If they know that person and they know they're quite hostile, or if they're unpredictable, that might be a barrier. So Stand By Me really was developed to address those key barriers. So a bystander is somebody that's present at an incident, but they're not involved in it. So they're an observer or a spectator. And the bystander effect is where the presence of other people acts as a discouragement to individuals to actually intervene and help. And the more people there are, the less likelihood that anyone's going to help. So if we look at hate and we look at hate crimes, we look at the pyramid of hate, we started our life very much at the top of the pyramid, looking at criminal offences motivated by hate. But people don't just wake up and decide they're going to be homophobic, racist, sexist, hostile to people with disabilities, people with mental health problems. It starts at the bottom of that pyramid with those biases, those negative attitudes, thoughts, and feelings that when they're expressed in our environment and we don't respond to them, people think that what they're saying and doing is okay, so they will carry on doing that. And then that might jump up a level. If one of those people has got, you know, hostile views and attitudes towards gay people, that might then start influencing, for example, if they're involved in recruitment, who they decide to interview, who they decide to offer jobs to. So at the middle level of the pyramid, it's starting to have a direct impact on other people. And then again, if those behaviors and attitudes aren't addressed, in some cases, those might lead to hate crimes, criminal offences motivated by hate. So not every negative bias or negative attitude is going to lead to a hate crime, but every hate crime will have started its life somewhere as a series of negative attitudes, negative feelings that weren't addressed, that weren't engaged with. So really, you know, now most of our work starts at the bottom of the pyramid. We try and look at how we can prevent hate crimes happening, trying to catch things at the earliest level. So one, it's easier to intervene at that lowest level when negative biases and attitudes are expressed, but it's also got the best chance of stopping that escalation into more harmful behaviours. So we also developed a programme called Stand By Her, which was very much around tackling sexism and misogyny. And really our work is about changing social norms, is about changing how we all respond to hostility in our environments. And we say that Stand By Me really is a programme around tackling any form of hostility, you know, whether it's a hate crime, whether it's a negative attitude, happening to anyone, whatever characteristic or identity people have, in any environment. So whether that's in your neighbourhood, whether that's in your workplace, or whether that's in your place of education. So people commit some terrible acts, unfortunately, we know that. However, bystanders that have the power to intervene and choose not to do so allow these incidents to happen, continue, and potentially escalate. So bystanders are not neutral. There's a very active role that we play when we don't respond to hostility in our environment. And people will often say they're concerned about the consequences of intervening or responding. I'd invite you to think about the consequences of not intervening, because that's when we see those horrific events that end up in the papers. In the workplace, that's where we see people starting to take legal action. We see teams that become demoralized, people's individual mental health well-being starts being affected. So that's one of the things that we really emphasize on our training. Let's think about what happens if we don't intervene, because often we see that creep up the pyramid and those attitudes and those feelings have a tendency to escalate. So most people think an intervention has to be directed at the person, the perpetrator, but we've got 3 broad ways of approaching it. So first of all, you can address that perpetrator if you know them, if you feel comfortable, but also you can touch base with the person that's affected. Touching base with somebody when they've been affected by hostility lets them know that somebody cares. When something happens to someone and nobody responds, they think everyone else is thinking the same thing, or that nobody really cares about them. So touching base with that person is really important. And then the third approach is actually getting it reported somewhere, getting it logged. So even within a workplace, if something happens, getting it logged within HR. It might not lead to any action straight away, but after 6 months, somebody may sit there and say, we've had a number of people that have actually been raising concerns about, for example, comments around people with disabilities. Maybe we need to look at our training. Let's look at how we can improve it. Let's look at how we can address this. So getting things reported can often lead to action later on. So the benefits of interventions, if we all start doing a little bit more in the environments that we're in, and we're not just talking about, strangers in a public environments. Sometimes we're talking about people in our own families, in our own social circles, people that we work with. So if we all do a little bit more, it can lead those people that are directly affected to feel better supported, being shown some solidarity. They recognize that other people, accept and acknowledge that what happened to them was wrong, wasn't acceptable. To the people that are saying and doing these things, it gives them a chance to actually not do those things. If most people, if they say something that's harmful, they might not be aware that it's having a harmful impact. So if we give that feedback to them in a respectful way and say, actually, what you said was maybe quite triggering for some people, if they didn't intend that harmful impact, they'll probably be very mindful about what they ever say again. And that's done the trick. They won't do that again. Obviously, if people keep saying those things and they do have those harmful impacts, they require a different approach. That's sort of outside the realm of Stand By Me. But Stand By Me is about giving people a chance to be better, to improve their behavior, improve their attitudes. And if we're all reporting more, if we're all logging things more, it allows those organizations to make more informed decisions about how they're going to respond. Otherwise, they won't know. They won't know what's going on. Things will happen in their environments. People may stop using their services and they'll never know why. So let's keep reporting. And if we do that and it sort of has a trickle effect, hopefully it leads to people feeling safer in their neighborhoods, feeling more respected and valued in the workplace. So what allows a lot of this bad behavior to happen is not so much the few that do it, but the failure of the many to respond and react to it. And that's what we need. We just need more people responding. And then just going to, in closing, just mention another quote. Desmond Tutu says, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. So we're actually playing an active role in allowing these behaviors to continue and potentially escalate when we don't respond. And just some final thoughts. There's lots of things that take us up that pyramid. We've been hearing about many of them, divisive politics, people not being able to access housing, access health services. They're looking for someone to blame. So all of those things sort of take us up the pyramid, trying to find somewhere to sort of lay that blame. There's one thing that brings us down that pyramid, and that's connection. So if we can connect with people, then we're more likely to feel empathy. Once we feel empathy, we're more likely to intervene. And that's why, certainly in the UK, and I'm sure across the US and around the world, There's different agencies, many NGOs, that do projects that create spaces for different people to come together and make those connections. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nothing like a little mid-panel applause. Jordy, over to you. Please share with us about your organization and how it activates local communities.
Will do. Thank you so much. Good morning.
Can we have the slides back up?
It's good to be back here at Eradicate Hate. So my name is Jordy Nijnhuis. I'm the director of Dare to Be Grey. It's a non-profit based in the Netherlands, and we focus on a better understanding of and solutions to things like polarization, disinformation, radicalization, and hate. I think the name of the organization really says it all. We stand for that messy, nuanced, complicated middle ground within all those extreme opinions. So against polarization, against black and white thinking, against us versus them thinking, and recognizing that most of us live in that space in the middle, where we can meet each other, where we can build connections. We started about 10 years ago when debates and conversations in Europe became increasingly hostile and simplified. And now, fast forward almost a decade later, I think it's fair to say that the world has not become a better place. And since our inception, we ran dozens of campaigns, both locally, nationally, internationally, sometimes lighthearted, sometimes extremely serious, but always with the same goal, calling on people to get out of their echo chambers, step out of their filter bubbles, and claim their space in the middle. So there's a QR on the slides that links to our guide on the way we perceive polarization, the reasons why polarization spreads, excuse me, and how quickly identities become weaponized and how quickly nuance disappears in that battle. So feel free to scan the QR to find out more. And I'm sure it's something we all recognize. It's quite hard to get people out of their bubbles. It's hard to start these conversations. It's hard to have constructive dialogue in this increasingly polarized world. And COVID-19 made this even more urgent because suddenly everyone was online, and young people especially, they started living their lives most entirely online. And in these digital spaces, these bubbles grow stronger. And mistrust in institutions, but also skepticism about official voices, we also saw an increase in that. So for prevention work, this is kind of a turning point for us because traditional channels don't just reach young people anymore. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So that brings me to one of the places we work in, and that's the city called Venlo. It's right on the border with Germany. It has about a population of 100,000, and it's a diverse city. It's vibrant, but also facing real challenges in relation to this, around identity, belonging, community, trust, especially in the wake of the pandemic. And if I were to show up there with a polished NGO campaign, or with flyers and material from the local government, young people will just switch off. They will not listen to that message. They will not recognize that. So we figured we need a different approach to reach these youth who are finding themselves more in those silos. So we built a campaign, and we white labeled it, so we didn't want any connection with our organization. So this loosely translates to the stories of Venlo. We wanted to create something that felt like it embraced the voice of the community, like it was extremely local, carried by local people. And it includes people like an Olympic skateboarder from the area or a popular local musician you're seeing on the screen right now. And when these people speak up and have conversations with youth, all of a sudden they start to listen. So that's why in our interventions, we always look for credible voices. We're not the ones who should do the talking. Those credible voices should be the messenger. And these voices are trusted in a different way than institutions or NGOs. And they can translate difficult themes like radicalization, polarization, hate in a way that's real and relatable for those audiences. So, to build a campaign like this, our approach is always to understand the local context. What issues matter to the community? Who are the role models? What kind of stakeholders do we see in there? And where can we find these young people? Where do they spend their time? Both online and offline. From there, we build a network of youth workers, role models, grassroots organizations who can help to deliver this message and who can reach into those spaces where you can find the youth. We then use persuasive storytelling techniques. So these are often short but authentic, credible, even emotional stories that should resonate with the youth. And then we amplify those voices through targeted ads and social media campaigns, so we can also translate these local grassroots stories to online spaces. And it's really about finding the right voices with the right message and target them to the right audiences in that time. And a campaign like this is inspired by the public health approach. So I had a lot of nice conversations with Heidi Ellis. I'm sure you've all seen her. And we also include off-ramps and pathways towards mental health support. Different communities in the region or area where youth can find connection, but also to resources for youth they can use in their day-to-day lives. And I believe a model like this is really scalable, but also replicable in different contexts, of course. Next slide, please. But I think we all understand and know that awareness alone is not enough, right? We have to go a bit deeper. We need to add more to that mix. And sometimes that means you have to make these complicated topics a little bit more fun, even. So one of the tools we developed in the campaign is called the Smaakstation. It's Dutch for the taste station. It's a weird translation, I know. And we developed this with We Are Social Rebels, and it looks like a typical Dutch snack wall. So you put a couple of euros in the wall, and then you open up the wall and you grab a croquette or a burger. But instead of finding that croquette, you'll now find an opinion. And on the top of it is a provocative statement. So by opening the doors, you show to your opponent, in a way, how much you agree and disagree with that statement, and then inside you'll find a follow-up question. Or something that does not just ask you to defend your statement, but also to imagine or understand the perspective of the person opposite of you. And this process is then guided by a youth worker. It's playful, but it works. It's a way to get young people to start talking about these issues, to start debating, but most importantly, to also start listening to each other. And that's where resilience begins, right? Knowing your own view, but also being able to emphasize with the other and learning to disagree better. And I think that's a skill that seems to be lost these days. So let me just wrap up real quick because I'm also very excited about our conversations later. I think our approach boils down to three key things. One is meet people where they really are, especially online. Work with voices they can trust, who are credible for them, and try to create spaces for deeper engagement, not just awareness. And COVID really showed us how fragile those connections can be, but also how we, through a bit more creative approaches, can start rebuilding them. And whether it's in the Netherlands, in Europe, or in the US, that's, I think, what it takes to push back on polarization and hate. Real people, real voices, and sometimes a snack wall like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Robin, please share a little bit about the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I think about the fact that I'm up here the only part of LA government, actually, and with Los Angeles County government. And you know, the complicated position that has put us in, because historically, of course, government hasn't always played the role of being the innovator of programs, and particularly ones that are necessarily addressing hate and prejudice. And I think back to the fact that my mother, when she was 16 years old, found herself swept up in the Japanese-American internment conducted by our federal government back in World War II. And you know, that's just one example where government has played a role of actually perpetrating hate and discrimination and prejudice in a massive form. So part of it was recognizing that the role we play, we had to overcome that challenge of many people distrusting government. And we know that that's part of the reason why hate crime is continually underreported year after year. That's documented by the Justice Department. And so one of the things we tried to do is to create something that would not appear so governmental, and to also recognize that asking people to distinguish whether or not they actually experienced hate crime versus a hate incident is not something that's fair to ask people. I mean, within our agency, we have debates about what sometimes a given act, whether it crosses the line or not. So we started to do something, and this really started, the germ of it really was after, back in the 80s when we started collecting hate crime data, and we saw that, unfortunately, what we were seeing in our county was that we always had the most hate crime reported of any county in the United States. Maybe partly a function that we are one of the largest, but we also were working on the fact that we educated our law enforcement that they had to report it. That was not an easy climb in and of itself, getting them to actually acknowledge and want to report hate crime, which they thought in many cases was not necessary. And then when we got to the point where we experienced the September 11th attacks, that triggered the largest number of hate crimes ever reported in our county's history. The anti-Muslim, Middle Eastern, anti-Arab sentiment hit literally almost every group in the county. And at that point, we started a hotline to report hate crime, from which we learned a lot of valuable lessons. So LA versus Hate is a product of all of that history. And let me just first ask us to go to the next slide, and to say that one of the things that is so important to recognize is that this got bipartisan support from our LA County Board of Supervisors. And Supervisor Hilda Solis was the leader of it, but was really critical in supporting my idea that it be a multi-year campaign, recognizing that LA County is far too large to make anything happen in 1 year. And also recognizing that we needed to embark on a system that, to be honest, I was very worried about. Creating a system where we ask people to report any act of hate or bias or discrimination in a county as large as 10 million people, I felt would be overwhelming. And what I've come to learn is that what we did was to really open it up to a whole bunch of people who before just had to live with what they had lived with their whole lives, and most of us have lived with our whole lives, which is when we experience an act of hate, unless it's a violent hate crime, you would just sort of sit with it and deal with it as you had to within your family, your friends, etc. And so creating this program where the government is saying, no, that's wrong, we want to know about it, we want to help you, is a whole sea shift in terms of understanding what is the role of government vis-a-vis hate and prejudice in our society. So you can see here on this slide that we saw something change in 2018 when we began this, the board passed the motion, that something had shifted in our environment. You could see in the picture from the left that there was ups and downs, but eventually dropping to the lowest ever number of hate crimes in 2013 that we'd ever had in our county. But then we saw in 2018 that unlike the past, there was no up and down anymore. It was just a continual rise in hate. We knew something had shifted, that had happened with, of course, the presidential elections in 2016 and the campaign for that, which started in 2014 and 2015. But it really started to show itself in the fact that we couldn't see any declines coming forth. And part of that was the fact that we were getting reports anecdotally as well as seeing in the numbers that people felt free to basically say what they felt, their worst selves, their worst instincts, their worst impulses, openly without any fear of any kind of social check. And so that was starting to be the pattern, and we realized we had to do something different. So when we watched LA versus Hate, this trend is something we recognized that we had to reverse, and we could only do that by building something that could grow over time. Not just a short-term campaign, but something that would continually to build year after year. Next slide, please. One of the things that we recognize in any place is that people can't connect with your programs and your reporting system and your assistance system unless they actually know about it. And so that is a huge challenge in a market, in a community as large as LA County, which is not only Los Angeles City, but 87 other cities. And we decided to use multiple ways of messaging to talk about what we offer to people. And so one of the things that you see here is that we utilized art, we utilized press conferences at key moments. We utilized engagement with community-based organizations and supporting them, creating a network of rapid response folks who would be able to they're already close to their community, would be trusted by their community, and therefore would be more effective at responding and being able to support their community members who had been affected by hate. The other thing is that we knew that we needed to have a reporting system that was not only good at taking the information in multiple languages, do it in a confidential way, and be seen as a safe place to report, but we also had to make sure that they followed up in a way that was meaningful. One of the things that we do, which is so different, is that we actually call back. Every single person who reports hate and agrees to it receives a call back within 2 days from what we call a care coordinator. And that care coordinator actually sits down with them and talks for as long as they want about what happened in a way that we can really understand the entire picture. And it's so helpful to really appreciate the many ways in which hate manifests itself and the context in which they come from, and to recognize some of the institutional and policy drivers of hate as well. So that's been a huge boon, and it also leads to an incredible array of remedies that we've been able to provide that include such things as helping people find housing because they've been trying so hard to deal with harassment by neighbors, for example, in their apartment or their home, and not getting the help to get out of that situation. Or people who have experienced it in a restaurant and recognizing that, maybe we can get that restaurant to train their staff and post signage to make sure that no other employee or no other customer has to experience the kind of hate and harassment that this individual did on a given occasion. And so all of these things are made it necessary for us to employ really every single opportunity we had to reach the huge audience that we had in LA County. If you can go to the next slide. So this marketing campaign, you can see some of the different community murals. The first thing we did is in the Summer of Solidarity mural campaign. We went to the communities most affected over time by hate in LA County, which is the African American community, Latino community, the Jewish community, and the LGBTQ communities. Consistently make up about 80% of the hate crime reported every year in our county. And when we did that, we saw that we were able to do something for each of those communities that sent a clear signal that we supported their belonging, that we were in solidarity with them, and that we wanted to make a statement to the entire community that they are a key part of our community, that we're going to stand with them through all of the years of hate that they have experienced in our county. And so you can see some of those murals there, as well as our multilingual postcards and other kinds of things to help continually raise awareness about our campaign. Next slide, please. The other thing we recognize is that we had to rely on social media, especially when you don't have the kind of money that can match the cost of LA County's media market. So we really relied heavily on social media, not only for the lower cost of it, but also because we can do diversity of messaging, which really is so important. Most communities especially ours, you can't do one message fits all and rely solely on that. You need to really figure out ways in which different communities can see themselves and express their feelings from their particular community's point of view. So you'll see that we have done that not only in different languages, but from different geographical communities, different cultural communities, and to the point where we have seen a huge number of people downloading and sharing these different gifts to their different social media platforms. Next slide, please. Okay, go to the next slide, please. That's integrated into other slides now. So one of the ways in which we decided to use the data that we have about reporting is that in a place as large as LA County, we wanted to show the impact it could make on a neighborhood level. So we used the information we had from our hate crime and hate incident reports to identify the zip codes that had the highest number of hate crimes against the most targeted groups. And so then we went to those neighborhoods and we worked with the local leaders, local artists, and we created a unique signage campaign that was specific to that area, and sort of taking a page from the inspiring work of Not in Our Town, which Patrice is responsible for, as well as Neighborhood Watch and those other campaigns where we try to send a message collectively, a visible message, so that it can send a message to those who are thinking that they can carry out acts of hate without any kind of impact. And so through that, we've targeted certain neighborhoods, and you can see the map with the dots of all the yard signs and the posters that we asked people to put up. Next slide, please, and I'm going to try to speed this up to wrap it up. So one of the other things that we also do is recognizing the importance of bystander intervention, which has been talked about earlier, just to say that that's part of what we want to offer every individual, so that we get to the point where we have thousands upon thousands of people who are trained in this and aren't going to be passive bystanders in the face of hate. We think that's key to shifting the environment and to empowering people at every level. I also want to mention that we empower law enforcement to not just act only if it's a hate crime, but we give them cards and training so that they can, and a video training that they can use to refer people who report to them believing it's a hate crime, and then being told by the police officer, oh, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do, it's not a hate crime, it happens all the time, but then to say, but you can get help here. And that is a huge connect and a huge way of reducing the frustration of people who go to the police thinking they're going to get some support, and sometimes, and most of the time, they're told, sorry, there's nothing we can do, period. Next slide, please. In order to do this, we have built partnerships, not only the Rapid Response Network that I mentioned, with community-based organizations. We've also funded over $1 million worth of support for hate violence prevention tools with other community organizations. And as I said, we partner with 211 LA, who is critical to being the reporting system and the support system for us. We've also engaged with LA Metro, which is really key because the public transportation system goes everywhere in LA County, and they have been an incredible partner at getting not only our posters out, but also a training video that we're hoping to get out soon with Right to Be. And that's part of our prep for the World Cup coming up, as well as the Olympics down the line. Next slide, please.
And Robin, I do want to get to one other question, so if we can make this maybe the last slide.
And this is the last
one.
Perfect. So, yes, sorry about that. So the last thing I wanted to say is that the diversity of messaging has resulted in, I think, an important thing to recognize, that when you're successful, sometimes it means your hate crimes go up even more because you are getting more people to report. And so that's something that we've had to explain as we have seen our hate crime reports increase, but recognizing that even where we have had success in becoming the third largest reporting source for hate crimes in our entire county, exceeding 44 city-based police departments, we also have to recognize that even apart from that, we see hate crimes still rising. So we know that this is a multi-year struggle, and that this is something that we know that is going to take all of us, not just here in LA County, but in the entire country and world. So I really appreciate being part of this global effort to eradicate hate.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our panelists for the comprehensive outline of your programs. I know we went a little over from what we discussed, but your programs are also rich, that I wanted to make sure people had an opportunity to really hear about the work that you're doing. But we have about 8 minutes left. We had discussed a couple of different questions, so what I'm going to do is open up both questions, and you all can choose your own adventure, keeping it tight so we can get people on to the next session. So one of the questions that I'm always interested in is what is a key challenge that you've run into, and what is an innovative way that you have overcome it? And then another question that I'm always interested in is who have been your key partners, and particularly who are your most surprising partners? Who are the people that we're not thinking of? So Jordy, maybe I'll start with you.
I'll go with the challenges, because those are many these days. So you don't even have to get started with funding, right? There's not a lot of funding for anti-polarization work in the world. But additionally, the people who spread polarization, or are at least responsible for most polarization, are well funded, and they tend to profit from it. So that's one of the biggest challenges we're facing. The solution for us was to go hyper-local, because if politicians and media organizations, plus the tech platforms, are responsible for pushing these narratives, that's a fight you're not going to win, right? But if you look on the local level for solutions, make those human, but also make those small and relatable, then at least you can have an impact over there. So you don't have to change the entire world in one go. I would love to, but that requires a bit more funding. But if you go local, at least you can make those communities a better place.
That's wonderful. That's really smart. Shamsar, I'm curious about you.
Yeah, I'll go with the challenge as well, if you don't mind. I think one of the challenges that we all face is that normalization of hate and hostility, the bar of that has actually become so high. On my training, I get sometimes people sort of saying, well, that was okay, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But I think it's just become so normal that, there's a long way to climb now to actually start bringing that down. I think part of the solution, and one of the things I've started to do, is I think we have to start being brave and laying those lines down and saying, I'll say, and especially the misogyny training, you know what, there's some things that have never been okay. It wasn't that things were okay before and they're not okay now. They've never been okay. And then, you will get some people that will mutter, well, you can't say anything nowadays. And again, you have to, I think, as educators, as practitioners, we have to be brave in actually drawing those lines. And I've actually now started saying, well, if you're going to say something that's derogatory about somebody because of their gender, because of their disability, because of their race, because of their religion, then you do have to be careful what you say. And I think, it's only when we start sending those messages that, we almost have to scare people a little bit and say, no, that's not okay. And if you want to become oversensitive about it and say, oh, normally when people say, oh, you can't say anything nowadays, what they really mean is, oh, you just can't be racist and homophobic anymore. And, we've got to be saying, yeah, you can't, and start drawing those lines.
I think that's such an important point. It's not that it was ever okay. It's just that no one was asserting that not okayness, right? I think that's really important. Patrice, over to you.
Well, I think all of us are thinking about the great challenge of now and the threat of hate. We're here, we're seeing it, we're feeling it. And I think we have to take this moment, this challenge, as an opportunity to reach the average person who knows that they want to do something about it and they need an access point. That's why we, not in our town, decided to partner and work on United Against Hate. It's an entry point. It is a way for people to do something simple, step their toes in, get to meet people, enter. It's a way for cities who have been timid and may even feel more reticent to do something now, but a way to say, hey, what can we do? And then we provide ongoing programming throughout the year and a way to develop those relationships. It's been really exciting to see, people started with a proclamation one year and you think, oh, okay, that's good. And then 3 years out, they're doing massive events and have developed really strong relationships. I think all of us, every one of us, like I did when I was walking down that street and saw that poster, want a way to enter into action with people in our local community. We want that. And so I think it's a challenge for all of us. Find a simple way to do it. From the discussions that you've heard here, I hope you do something for United Against Hate Week. Take this challenge and go back to people in your town and give them a way to enter this really long-term battle for humanity.
Patrice, that's such a good point. I think the enormity of this problem is overwhelming for a lot of people, and they feel like they don't know where to start. And reminding folks that starting by just immediately in your local community, what is one conversation or one meeting that you can go to, and to just start pulling, if we all pull the threads, right, we can unravel the whole tapestry, rug, I don't know what I'm unraveling, sweater, but we each have to just focus on pulling your thread, right? I think that's such a good reminder. And Robin, over to you. Do you want to do the key partners question, or you want to talk about challenges?
I want to talk about
everyone
the
wants to
which
talk
I think
about challenges.
applies to all of us, which is that resources, right? At a time when we know that the dangers of hate are the greatest, and that the direction we're heading in is so important to change, the resources are drying up because of the fears around the economy, the actual impacts of a lot of the federal government actions. At least that's what we're experiencing in LA County. The way that I think that we should think about more is, and of course I think about it because I'm in government, but I really do think that people need to look at government as a source of support and a source of long-term support, because why shouldn't it be the role of government to be funding and supporting anti-hate work year in, year out? And so we actually have seen that in being able to, when we started to see budget challenges, we went to the board and we looked for ongoing funding, and we got that. But the other thing that I just want to point out is in places like LA County, and I think it's true of many cities, there are actually voting majorities who will support small amounts of taxes on themselves to support the work. We've seen that in LA County. I'm talking about like a nickel or a dime per person in your jurisdiction could be an amazing amount of support that could really create ongoing campaigns. And let's be honest, this is not going to end today or tomorrow. We've unleashed something here. We've seen it unleashed. That's going to be going on for a long time. So if we can create those long-term streams of funding, we really have a shot at not only turning this around, but building the kind of networking and programs that could, over the long run, bring us to the society that we know we need to be.
Thank you. I think that's the funding piece. Again, it's another thing that feels totally overwhelming. But if you can break it down, smaller and really think about smaller contributions over a broader stretch, I think it is a much more surmountable problem. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank all my panelists. I want to thank all of you for being here. There wasn't a way to take questions, although we were all very eager to do so. So if you want to ask questions afterwards, we'll be down here, or you can reach out through the app, the Eradicate Hate app. I want to also thank Eradicate Hate and the organizers for hosting this really important conversation, and for hosting all of us. So I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.
Can I make a quick plug? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I brought from Los Angeles a number of things from our campaign that I just want to invite people to come and take limited amounts, but we have a t-shirt here, we have a brochure, we have buttons, we have stickers, and other things that they'll be at the Pittsburgh Human Rights Commission table. So I please encourage you to grab something.
Awesome. Yes, come look at all the tables. There's some great swag. We have little ducks at ours. Thanks, everyone.